Well, hey everybody, Paul Abernathy here. Welcome to another Master the NEC video where we're going to look at a certain aspect of the National Electrical Code. So I know you're excited to learn about the NEC, but if you are not as savvy with the NEC and you want to be, then you know what? Do me a favor. All you got to do is go to our website, fasttracksystem.com, get one of our courses. If you're preparing for an exam, then get our exam prep courses. If you already have a license and you just want a code expert in your pocket, then get our Mastering the NEC program, both of which have a built-in communication feature, which you can post questions, get answers, upload images. Okay, so that's built throughout our system. Or maybe you just want a good grounding and bonding course because we know how tough grounding and bonding can be. I see your posts on TikTok and Instagram. So if you struggle with grounding and bonding, get our grounding and bonding course. We love teaching people the National Electrical Code. And again, our programs are designed to teach you the NEC, but I'm always here to help whenever you need me. Okay, so anyway, enough of that. Today's lesson, we're going to be looking at non-metallic sheathed cable, NM. Of course, it goes by a trade name Romex for Southwire, but the real name is non-metallic sheathed cable. And so we're going to be looking at an aspect of it that I see this all over TikTok, and I'm seeing this all over Instagram and all these places, and these so-called experts are saying, well, I'm allowed to use non-metallic sheath cable outside in a raceway in a wet or damp location. I'm seeing this all over the internet. Look, I'm here to tell you, and I just recently had a communication with a counterpart of mine over in a large manufacturer of wiring cable that's down in Georgia, as well as I am the director of technical service for Prismium Encore Wire. Both of us make non-metallic sheath cable. Okay, so you have collectively the largest manufacturers of non-metallic sheath cable. Okay, so I'm speaking from this position. Okay, all right. Now, I have heard where people say, hey, my jurisdiction allows me to go up to 10 feet outside with non-metallic sheath cable. Or my jurisdiction's okay with using the conductors inside of it, stripping them out and being able to do it. I'm seeing this all over the place. Okay, I'm here to give you the definitive truth. Now, whether a jurisdiction allows this, that's possible. If they put it in writing and they do an amendment. But the problem with that is the moment they do, they increase their liability because now the AHJ in the inspector cannot have plausible deniability because the manufacturers have spoken, the listings are what they are, the NEC states what it says. So at the end of the day, look, they're going to be held accountable if something does happen. But you as an electrician, you say, well, my AHJ says it's okay for up to 10 feet. Okay, well, you just do you, boo. But here I'm going to set the record straight. And for all you AHJs out there who are allowing non-metallic sheath cable to be used in a wet or damp location, anywhere outside or in a raceway outside, don't be contacting the manufacturer in case something happens because you're on your own. And whatever happens to the electrician, they're on their own because the code is a minimum safety standard. Okay? All right. With that said, let's go see what the NEC says about this first. Okay? So here we're at the National Electrical Code. So let's knock this one out first because everybody hates this one like, Paul, you're just quoting code. Okay, I'm going to quote code for you. Ready? So here we're at non-metallic sheath cable. And this is a minimum safety standard, by the way. So here I am, Article 334. Okay, and I am in the 2023 edition of the NEC. I will mind you that this did not change. Okay, whether you're in the 2020, 2017, 2014, 2011, it did not change. Okay. All right, so let's go down and look at uses not permitted. So this is, you are not permitted to use a non-metallic sheath cable in these specific applications or locations, okay? So here we get uses not permitted here, but here is specific to type NM cable, okay? Oh, and by the way, a little tidbit of knowledge for folks, because I like to drop the knowledge. If you see NM-B, the B only signifies that the conductors inside of it have a 90-degree rated insulation. Why is that important? Because the 90-degree insulation allows you to do adjustment and corrections and all of that's in 334.80. At the end of the day, you still can't exceed the 60-degree ampacity rating in 310.16. That's the ampacity table. But for adjustment and corrective purposes, you get to use the 90 value. As long as at the end of the day, you don't exceed the 60. If that confuses you, then you know what you need to do. You need to go to our Fast Tracks tube and you need to subscribe. You need to watch my D-rating demystified video because it sounds like you would need to learn the understanding of adjustment and corrections and how that takes place. Don't worry, we got you covered in those videos. That's the exclusive video platform, fasttrackstube.com. If you go now and you subscribe, but wait, watch this video first. But when you do go, use the coupon code 50OFF at checkout, and you'll get 50% off your first annual subscription, okay? All right, let's get back to the lesson. So when you're down here, it says type NM cable shall not be used under following conditions or the following locations. All you got to do is go to item number 4, right here. Wet or damp locations, okay? So don't really have to do anything else. If you've got a non-metallic sheath cable, right, then you can't use it in a damp or wet location, okay? Now, for most people, they would be okay with that. They'd say, oh, well, the code is a minimum safety standard. Again, if your jurisdiction has some kind of amendment, it has to be in writing, okay? Otherwise, you've got no leg to stand on. If they put it in written form as an amendment, then you know what? If that's what they want, they have every right to do that. However, if there is an issue, okay, and let me give you a great example. Okay, here's a true example. In Texas, the state observes the latest edition of the NEC, so 2023. You could have a jurisdiction that may be on a lesser version, because they're allowed, the municipalities are allowed to go to a lesser version, or a later version, or an earlier version, or whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, you could have the state on 2023. You could have a specific locality on 2020. It's possible. All right. Now, if that jurisdiction has an adopted rule in that jurisdiction that you can use non-metallic sheath cable outside, let's say they have it. If something happens, somebody gets hurt, guess what's going to happen? The state will step in. If that's a state rule, which is Texas is, the Texas will say, you know what? I don't care what your jurisdiction says. The rule in Texas is we're on the 2023 NEC. The 2023 NEC says that you cannot use non-metallic sheath cable in a wet or damp location. Who do you think, as far as the electrician's concerned, is going to win this fight? Sadly, the state. The electrician says, wait a minute, I did what the jurisdiction said do. I'm immune from it. Sorry, you're not immune from it. So depending on your state and your rules, and you may argue with me, you're looking at this right now, blue in the face, right? You're probably arguing with Angry Sparky, and you're blue in the face, and you're going, but my jurisdiction says it's okay. You do you, boo. I'm just telling you what the code says, and if you feel like it'll never have a problem, then you do you, but I'm just telling you what the code says. So that is what the NEC says, okay? All right, with that said, the next thing that people say is, hey, Paul, is it okay for me to take that cable, NM cable, non-metallic sheath cable, or if you're Southwire, it's Romex, which is, again, just a trade name for Romex, which they got from General Cable, which they bought from Rome Cable Company or Rome Wire. So it has a long legacy. It all means non-metallic sheath cable, okay? So you may say, well, Paul, I had somebody tell me that I can rip those conductors out of that cable assembly that is a listed UL 719 cable, that I can take those conductors out of it, and then I can use those conductors inside of liquid tight or in some other type of wiring method. That's what I'm hearing all over social media. Well, I just finished a conversation with my counterpart at a large manufacturer of wiring cable, as I represent a large manufacturer of wiring cable, and neither of us will put any markings on those conductors that are inside of our non-metallic sheath cable. One, because we don't have to, and I'll show you that in the standard, okay? Because we mark all the information on the jacket that's extruded over those conductors, because we intend you to use that non-metallic sheath cable as a cable assembly. We don't intend for you to strip things out of it and use that. We make wire for that. We have wire that complies to UL 83 that does require the various markings on it. So we make both. So we choose to not put the markings on it. Now, some people say, Paul, it's semantics. Won't that wire last forever? It might. Problem is, it's not right. And you do what you want to do. But I'm just telling you the way the rules work. So with that said, let's go look at the UL standard because people question it. So here's the UL standard that we're dealing with right now. Okay. And I will go on and adjust this because I want to make sure that we get all of this in here. Okay. So let me go on and adjust this down so we can get it all in here. Okay. So here we go. We got it all in here. And while it may be difficult for you to see, I can jump up a little bit in size and try to make this more palatable. Okay. So now we're in what's called UL 719. This is the, and let me show you that. So in case anybody says I'm not, there it is, 719. And this is the standard for non-metallic sheath cable. Okay. All right. So let's go down real quick. I will take you back down to the construction. All right. So here's what we're interested in, the insulation, not the sheathing. Okay. That's the sheathing on the outside of it. That's sheathing. That's never insulation. Y'all know that. The inner conductors. Now, notice what it says. It says both before and after assembly onto finished cable. It said the insulation employed on the circuit conductors shall comply with A or B, and the insulation employed on the control or signal conductors shall comply with C. Okay, so that's for that new NMPCS where you have both 0 to 10 and the power in the same cable assembly. Very rare for non-metallic. I don't know when you would really want to need that because everything's Wi-Fi now. But we do that with MC cable. It's called MCPCS. I hold various patents on that. So I'm very intimate with that kind of construction. But it is available in NM if you want. It's just that really who would use it today because of all the Wi-Fi in a dwelling. But anyway, it's available if you want it. Now, let's look here. So notice that it says THHN construction. So I have two choices of the insulation types to use in my non-metallic sheet cable. I can use TW construction or I can use THHN construction. It says the jacketed insulation for a type NM or NMC cable shall have a nylon or similar jacket and shall comply with the thickness and the other applicable requirements for THHN thermoplastic insulated wire without any surface markings of THHN or the -B or any ampacity or temperature ratings. So right there, we meet the construction rules. Okay, so far equivalent. So sometimes people twist when we say THHN equivalent. They don't understand that we're talking about the construction equivalent. So it has to have the same thickness of insulation, has the same thickness, typically 4 mils of the nylon, which is not insulation. It's a covering or a jacketing over top of the insulation. That's what we're meeting, okay? And that's what most all of us manufacturers will meet, okay, in that application, all right? But let's go a little further because, again, this is quite interesting stuff that people seem to still today don't understand, okay? Now, let's go on a little more. So then you've got B, okay? So B is TW construction, but it's just insulation. It doesn't have any nylon coating on it. Now, why would manufacturers choose a THHN type of construction over a TW? Well, the basic obvious reasons for that is we make a whole lot more of THHN/THWN. So we make a whole lot more of it. And we sell a lot of non-metallic sheet cable, but we sell a lot of THHN, THWN-2 that requires the markings. So we can use the same product. It's just instead of putting it through the markings, we save on all the ink. So we don't have to put the ink on it. And ink is expensive, especially when you're running millions and millions and millions of feet of it. So the standard allows for us to not do that. So we don't do it. Okay. Now, could I, as a manufacturer, use a pure THHN inside of it that does have the markings on it, that has the THHN on it, the ampacity, the temperature ratings, and all that? Absolutely, I could. But why would I? Because I don't need to. I'm saving money. And typically, a non-metallic sheet product is a lower tier product. Okay? So we're trying to control the margins. Dude, we're in business too, okay? It all makes sense. Doesn't mean it's any less safe. It just is what we're allowed to do. So back to the rules here. Okay, now for NM only, so this one right here talks about complies with the requirements without any surface marking. Again, it says for NM or NMC cable, the insulation material shall be dry location. Listen up, folks. Dry location PVC that complies with the requirements for THHN insulation without any surface markings of the ampacity or temperature rating. Okay. The surface marking of -B is optional anyway, so we choose not to do that. And of course, it also ends up telling you what? You have to meet all these tensional elongations, physical properties, all this stuff has to be met. Now, for NM only, so we're not talking about NMC, which, by the way, NMC is a non-metallic that's used in a corrosive environment. Nobody makes that anymore. It's basically equivalent to UF cable. Which is basically what you really want to use if you have a corrosive environment, right? So you don't want to use NMC. Nobody makes it. Okay, so that's why you still see NMC in the standard, but nobody uses it. If you have those locations, then you would use UFB for that, which again is UF, underground feeder, but it's also for branch circuits as well. So don't let that confuse you just because its nomenclature is UF, okay? All right, so NM only. It says type NM is eligible for use as a thermoplastic insulating material other than PVC. So we don't have to use a PVC pelletized material, but the performance in the rating, okay, shall be determined by an investigation. So it needs to be electrically comparable to PVC insulation for the type THHN, yada, 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 and meet all the flame requirements. None of us manufacturers are going to do that. We're going to use PVC. It's a cheaper pellet. It already has the inherent flame retardant properties in it. That's what we're going to use. So all of us manufacturers just use a PVC. Now, do we have the ability to use something else as long as it meets all of the requirements to be equal to PVC material? Yes. But do we? No, we don't. Now, is that to say it's not in China does it? Maybe, but not us, not major manufacturers. We're going to use a PVC material for that application, okay? All right, so that's where you get everything, all right? So the question always, and again, you'll notice it says before and after the assemble of the finished cable, okay? Now, the question is, people say, well, why don't, if I just strip it out, why can't I use it? Because of marking requirements, all right? So when it comes to marking requirements, we have to say, okay, what do we have to say for marking requirements? All right, so what we're going to do now, again, is go a little deeper. All right, and so we're going to go look at the NEC again. So here you have 300.3 for conductors. And oh, by the way, I'm in the 2023 NEC. This did not change, okay? It's the single conductors. It says single conductors specified in 310.4.1 shall only be permitted or installed as part of a recognized wiring method specified in Chapter 3. So individual single conductors in themselves are not to be used unless they're in a recognized wiring method. Non-metallic sheath cable, Article 334, is a recognized wiring method, okay? But as far as the conductors themselves, in order to comply with a UL Standard 83, you're required to have various markings on it. Okay, so if we were to go look at UL 83, and I'll see if I can't bring this up really quickly, and let's see if I can get us the version that we would look at here. Hold on. And so let me get into the markings, and let's see if I can share this with you. So let's go over here, and I'll share this tab. So this is UL 83, and we look at the markings on the products, okay? Says all markings on finished products shall be visible and legible. The use of surface marking, indent, or embossed marking shall meet the intent of this requirement, okay? So we're required to have what? Finished wire or cables shall have a durable, distinct marking throughout its entire length by which the organization responsible for the product can be identified. That's a UL 83. So the conductors that you use in raceways, when you buy it, this is what it has to have, all right? Also, the wire that complies with the requirements of 2 or more types, like a THHN/THWN, because nobody makes just THHN anymore. It's always dual rated, okay? If that's the case, like you see right here, right? Then it's got to have what? It's got to have the size of the conductor on it. In this case, it would be AWG, or it would be in KC mil, depending on the size, right? And in the United States, it has to also comply with these items, right? So it has to have what? Okay? All of these requirements. Got to American wide, it's got to meet B. It has to meet C where applicable. It have to meet D where applicable. All these things have to be on the wire. Well, you just saw a minute ago with non-metallic sheath cable, it's not required to put any of that on the wire. We would put the pertinent information under UL 719 on the cable sheathing, whether it's embossed in it or printed on it. Most of the time we dot matrix print on it. But again, as you can see, we don't mark the individual conductors. But when you take those conductors out and you plan on using them, now they have to comply with the standard UL 83, or if it happens to be like an XHHW, it's got to meet UL 44. Well, there's no markings on it. So how can you use it in a raceway? How can you use it in another wiring method unless that wiring method has specific rules that allow you to use a conductor with no markings on it? So by you stripping it out, you're not using it with its implied intent, which again, not marking it, it's implied by 719 that it can only be used within that cable assembly. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do. You do what you want to do, boo. But the reality is, folks, anybody out there that is telling you that you can just strip the conductors out of a non-metallic sheet cable and use them in another type of wiring method are false. Now, can you use small pieces in a junction box that are properly wired with the proper cable assembly? Absolutely you can, because that isn't an enclosure. We understand that. But to use it in a raceway without the proper markings, that is against both UL 719, that is against UL 83. If it's thermoset or a crosslink polyethylene, it's against UL 44. All those things just make sense, folks. So let's put that to rest. You do you. If you're a jurisdiction that's allowing the use of non-metallic sheet cable, which, mind you, has paper inners, okay? If you, and it's never been evaluated other than short-term testing with moisture exposure or water exposure, okay? It was never fully evaluated for long-term reliability and assurability of life expectancy when you put it in those environments that it's not listed for. Yes, it may outlast you and me, but then again, it may not. But what you have done is glorious me. You removed manufacturer's liability for everything because you're using it outside of the scope of what it was designed for. So if you want to do that and give us the get out of jail card all the time, you do you, boo. We'll catch you on another episode. Till next time, folks. Hope you learned something today. Take care.